Let me tell you something about the night my sister tried to kill me. It was raining. Not the soft, forgiving kind of rain that washes things clean, this was the hammering kind, the kind that feels personal, like the sky has a grievance and you're the target. I was standing at the edge of Ashwood Cliffs, the same cliffs where Mira and I used to scream into the wind as children, daring each other closer to the edge while our mother's voice echoed through the trees behind us, calling us back to safety. There was a silver blade in my hand. My knuckles were split open and bleeding, and the blood ran down my fingers and dripped into the dark below like something out of a dream I couldn't wake from. And she was standing across from me. My sister. Mira. She was smiling. Not the smile I grew up with, that slow, private smile she saved for moments when no one else was watching. This was different. This was the smile of someone who has already decided how the story ends. The smile of someone who has been planning for years. She said, "It was always going to come down to this, Lena." And God help me, she was right. But if you want to understand that cliff, that rain, that blade, that smile, you have to go back. You have to understand what we were, where we came from, and the secret that my sister buried so deep inside herself that she almost convinced even her own reflection it wasn't real. Almost. The pack, the bloodline, and us. Our pack is called the Ashwood Pack. 6 generations old. Not the largest pack in the region, there are packs up north that could swallow us whole and call it a light meal. But we are old, and in werewolf society, old means something. Old means roots that go down past the topsoil, past the clay, all the way to bedrock. Our mother, Alpha Sera Voss, was the kind of leader who made every room feel safer the moment she walked into it. Tall, dark-haired, with amber eyes that caught sunlight like trapped fire and could read a lie before the words finished leaving your mouth. She was fair, strategic, and so genuinely loved by her pack that her name was spoken with the particular softness people reserve for things they're afraid to lose. I am Lena Voss. The younger daughter, by 14 months. Always the quiet one, the girl who read too much. Who preferred the forest to the training grounds, who would rather sit with an injured packmate and learn to wrap a wound than spar with the warriors at dawn. My mother called me her still water. She said still waters run the deepest. Mira called me soft. Mira Voss. My older sister. Brilliant in the way obsidian is brilliant, sharp-edged, dark, and beautiful in a way that makes you want to get closer even when you know you shouldn't. She had our mother's build, our father's ambition, and a hunger that I don't think was born in her so much as grew in her, year by year, like ivy finding cracks in a wall it intends to eventually bring down. She was magnetic. Wolves gravitated toward her at gatherings the way they gravitate toward fire in winter. She made you feel, when she turned her full attention on you, that you were the most important creature in the room. She made the whole pack feel that way. We were not always enemies. I need you to hold that before I show you everything that followed, because the story I'm telling you is a tragedy, and tragedies require love as their foundation. Without love, destruction is just violence. With love, it becomes something that leaves marks that never fully heal. Once upon a time, Mira was my entire world. She was 7 years old when she pulled me out of the creek after I fell in. She was 18 when she stayed up all night with me through my first shift, holding my hand through the worst of it, her voice steady and low, saying, "You're not breaking, Lena, you're becoming," while I shook and gasped and became something new and terrifying. She was the first person I called when anything happened, good or bad. She was my orientation point, the fixed star I navigated by. I loved her before I feared her. Before I understood her. Before the thing I know now, that I would give almost anything to unknow. But that comes later. First, the inheritance. What was at stake? When an alpha of our pack steps down, the title does not simply pass to the eldest child. The Ashwood tradition holds that the heir must be chosen by a council of 12 senior wolves, generals, elders, bonded mates of previous alphas, through a process called the proving. Strength, loyalty, worth. 3 pillars. A vote. The kind of ceremony that carries 6 generations of weight behind every gesture. Both Mira and I had been raised toward this. It was never a secret. When we were old enough to understand, our mother sat us both in her stone-walled study and said, "Only one of you can lead. But that doesn't mean only one of you matters. Every great alpha needs a second, a mirror, a truth-teller. If one of you takes this seat, the other becomes her most important advisor. That is not a lesser role. It is a different one." Mira smiled and nodded. I believed her. I'm not certain Mira ever did. The formal proving was set for our 25th year. The year our mother planned to step down. Mira was already 25. I was 24, with 2 months left to go. But the proving never came. Because first, our mother died. The death of Alpha Sera. She died in winter. A hunting accident, rare but not impossible, even for an alpha. The forest in those months is treacherous, ice on the rocks, unpredictable terrain, sudden storms that close in without warning. She was found at the base of Greywood Ridge by 2 of our scouts, Dren and Wren. They said she must have slipped. Her head had struck stone. She had been dead for hours before they found her. I remember the morning they came to tell me. I was in the library, I was always in the library, and Beta Marcus appeared in the doorway and I knew before he opened his mouth. Something in the particular stillness of his body, the way he was bracing himself against information he was about to transfer to me and didn't want to. I don't remember much of the weeks that followed. They passed the way time passes in deep grief, not sequentially, but in fragments. Firelight. Voices. My own hands, which seemed to belong to someone else. The pack grieved loudly and collectively. Mira organized everything, the funeral rites, the vigil fires, the formal announcements to neighboring packs. She moved through those weeks like a woman who had found her purpose, calm and capable and constantly visible. The contrast between us was sharp. While she showed the pack a leader emerging from grief's fire, I sat in mine like a room I couldn't find the door out of. I hated myself for it at the time. I thought I was failing some test. I didn't know then that the test had already been rigged. The seed. It was Kale who first made me look at it differently. Kale was our head scout, quiet, careful, the kind of man who misses nothing and says only what he means. We had been friends for years, the 2 of us alike in the ways that make friendship easy. Neither of us needed noise to be comfortable, neither of us performed for audiences. We walked the tree line together most evenings, had for years, speaking or not speaking with equal ease. 3 months after my mother's death, on one of those evening walks, he said very quietly, like he didn't want the trees to hear. "Your mother was found at the base of Greywood Ridge." "I know," I said. "She's been running that ridge since before you were born," he said. "She knew every stone. Every root. Every place the ice forms early." I stopped walking. "She didn't slip," he said. "Then nothing else." I didn't respond. We finished the walk in silence. But something had shifted, some locked door in my mind had been found, if not yet opened. On the long walk home, in the cold dark, I let myself stand at the edge of a thought I had been avoiding with the particular determination of someone who knows that thinking it will change everything. What if my mother's death wasn't an accident? And if it wasn't, who had the most to gain? The answer came immediately, the way the answers to terrible questions always do, instantly, completely, and with a certainty you immediately start trying to disprove because the alternative is accepting something unbearable. The investigation I wasn't supposed to run. I am not a fighter. I am a reader. An observer. A question asker. So I did what I do, I started asking questions. I went back to both scouts who found the body. Dren gave me the same clean, detailed, almost rehearsed account he'd given at the formal inquest. But Wren, older, quieter, 18 years as a scout, held my gaze a half-second too long when she finished speaking. I recognized it, the face of someone who told the truth but knows the truth wasn't the whole picture. I came back to Wren alone 3 days later. I just want to know if there's anything else, I told her. Anything you didn't say because you weren't sure of it. She was quiet for a long time, staring at a fixed point on the wall. Then, there was a scent. Near the body. Not wolf, or not only wolf. Something sharper. Like an herb. Like something had been burned nearby. She paused. Dren said it was probably carried in by the storm. And maybe he was right. I told myself he was right. But I've been a scout for 18 years, and I don't dismiss things I can't identify. I just didn't know what to do with it. The Alpha was dead. The inquest was closed. I thanked her and went to our pack's healer, old Greta, who maintained a library of medicinal and toxic plants comprehensive enough to make most packs nervous. I described the scent as Ren had described it. Sharp. Burned. Detected outdoors in winter near a body. Greta went very still. Velcreed, she said. What is it? A root plant. Rare. Grows only above 800 meters in the high forest. She was looking at me with an expression I had never seen on her face before, fear. If you burn concentrated Velcreed and a wolf inhales the smoke, it suppresses the shift reflex. For 1 to 2 hours, the wolf cannot change form. If they were already shifted, they revert to human. The understanding arrived in my chest like something cold being poured into a warm room. In wolf form, our injuries heal, bones knit, wounds close, the body corrects itself with miraculous efficiency. But in human form, we are fragile as anyone. We bleed. We break. We die from falls that our wolf forms would shrug off. If someone had burned Velcreed near my mother, if she'd been in wolf form and been forced back to human, if she had then fallen from that ridge she'd known her entire life, in a body that couldn't heal itself, she wouldn't have slipped. She would have been made to fall. I sat in Greta's dispensary for a very long time. Then I went looking for who had access to Velcreed. There were 3 people in our pack with the botanical knowledge and the physical range to harvest it. Greta herself, who I trusted absolutely. An elder named Caius, bedridden for months with illness. And the third, a person who had spent the previous 2 years studying advanced herbalism with Greta, out of what she described as personal interest. Mira. I found Greta's harvest records. 3 months before my mother's death, Mira had signed out a harvesting kit for a solo collection trip into the high forest. She had logged what she collected as common winter bark and gray fern. Neither plant grows above 500 meters. She had been up there, above 800, and had lied about what she brought back. There were gaps, of course. This wasn't proof of presence on the night of the death. It wasn't proof she had burned anything. What I had was circumstantial, a story constructed from implication and inference, not walls of fact. But I knew. The way your body knows a storm before the sky changes. I knew my sister had killed our mother. And I knew she had done it in precisely the right window of time to spend the next 3 months positioning herself as the grief-stricken, capable heir apparent, so that by the time the council convened, the pack would have already chosen her in their hearts long before anyone cast a vote. The first confrontation. I went to Mira before I went to the council. Maybe I should have done it the other way around. But what I had wasn't legal evidence, it was a shape, a shadow, a suspicion with bones but no skin. Going to the council with it would hand Mira the frame she needed, the younger sister, unhinged with grief, inventing a conspiracy. I needed to see her face when I said it. We met in the old sparring room, just the 2 of us, late at night. I told her everything, piece by piece, slow and deliberate. The scent. The Velcreed. The harvest records. The logic of the timeline. The botanical impossibility of what she'd logged. I watched her face throughout. She didn't flinch once. When I finished, she looked at me with those dark, steady eyes and said, "I love you, Lena. And this is grief talking. You're constructing a villain because it's easier than accepting that we lost her to bad luck." "Tell me about the harvest," I said. Tell me what you were collecting above 500 meters. I misremembered the species, she said. I was grieving. This was 3 months before she died, I said. Something moved behind her eyes, just a flicker, just the briefest guttering of a flame in a sealed room, and then it was gone. Go to bed, she said. We have the council meeting in 2 weeks. I know what you did, I said. She looked at me for a long moment. Then, very softly, be careful what stories you tell. A wolf who makes accusations she can't prove doesn't look like a truth seeker. She looks unstable. Unfit to lead. She left the room. I stood in the dark with my hands shaking, not from fear, but from the specific cold clarity of understanding exactly what I was up against. The council betrayal. The council convened on the full moon. I had prepared carefully, organized, logical, clean. I was going to lay out what I'd found before 12 wolves who had loved my mother, who had served her, who deserved to know what had been done to her. Mira went first. She spoke beautifully, as always. Vision for the pack, acknowledgement of each council member's history and wisdom, warm and specific tributes to our mother. And then, at the very end, she said she needed to address something difficult. My sister is in tremendous pain, she said. We both are. And I've noticed, with love and concern, that her grief has led her somewhere dark. She's been questioning packmates. Reviewing records. She has become convinced that our mother's death was not an accident. She paused. I understand it. When something is too painful to accept, the mind builds reasons to fight rather than surrender to grief. I am not angry with her. I am worried for her. She sat down. The room had already tilted. I stood. I spoke clearly, without breaking, even as my pulse hammered in my ears. I laid out everything, the scent, the Velcreed, the records, the timeline, the impossibility of the logged collection site. I was precise. I was logical. I made the case as well as it could be made with what I had. When I finished, Elder Oda, 30 years on this council, someone my mother had trusted completely, looked at me with gentle, concerned eyes and said, Lena. When did you sleep last? That was when I understood I had lost the room. Later, I pieced together what Mira had built while I was building my case. In the weeks before the meeting, she had spoken privately to 6 of the 12 council members. Not about me directly, nothing that could be recognized as orchestration. She had raised the topic of grief responses in wolves who lose a parent during succession transitions. She had shared a fabricated story about a distant cousin who had experienced paranoid ideation after a similar loss, accusations, relationship damage, eventual recovery with the right support. She had planted a frame. By the time I stood up to speak, half the council was already sitting inside the picture she had painted for them. They named Mira acting Alpha. They gave me, with great sympathy and ceremony, a recommendation to rest and return for the formal proving in 3 months. It was the most elegant humiliation I had ever experienced. I walked out and made myself a promise. 3 months in the fire. I did not rest. I threw myself into 3 months of the hardest, loneliest work of my life, and I did it almost entirely alone, except for Kale, who ran down every lead I gave him without complaint or doubt, whose quiet faith in me never wavered even when mine and myself did. The breakthrough was the supplier. Greta had mentioned him once, in passing, Osric, a trader who moved rare botanical materials across packed territories, operating in the gray commercial spaces between formal alliances. Difficult, she'd called him. I found him 3 weeks into my search, working out of a market town 2 hours east of our territory. I went alone, which was dangerous. It was also necessary. Osric was indeed difficult. He was also a businessman who kept meticulous records because, as he told me, a man in his trade who didn't keep records ended up in unmarked holes in the forest. He remembered Myra's purchase. It had been unusual, Velcreed not being a common request, and the quantity had been notable. He had assumed it was a healer's order. He had thought nothing of it. He showed me his ledger. Date, quantity, buyer's name, Lena Voss. 6 weeks before my mother's death. I paid for a certified copy, his own handwriting, his own mark. Something that could not be dismissed as my fabrication. Something concrete enough to reopen what the council had closed. I had her. Not completely. Not with the clean certainty of a courtroom confession. But enough to force the question back into the room, loudly, with documentation, in front of 12 wolves who would have to answer for it. I should have moved directly to the council that morning. I know that now, every version of this night I replay, that's the moment I would change. Instead, I stopped home first to make copies, to eat, to sit for 10 minutes in our childhood kitchen and let myself feel the possibility that it was almost over. Mira was in the kitchen. She looked at me. She looked at the leather folder in my hands. She was too intelligent, too attuned to the architecture of my expressions after a lifetime of watching them. She knew, from the particular way I was holding myself, that something had changed. She poured tea. She said, casually as a summer morning, I didn't know you were out. Where did you go? Just a walk, I said. Of course, she said. She smiled at me over the cup. And behind the smile I saw the shift, one phase ending, another beginning. The long game folding itself away. Something faster and more direct taking its place. She was done waiting. The 3 days of war. She moved first. She reported to the council that I had left Pact territory without permission during the pre-proving period, a minor violation technically, but symbolically loaded, another brushstroke on the portrait of an unstable candidate. I filed a formal counter-motion to reopen the investigation into my mother's death, and submitted Osric's record as evidence. The council wobbled. You could see it, the ground shifting under what had seemed solid. Oda looked at Osric's ledger for a long time before setting it down, and her expression was no longer gentle concern but something harder and more reckoning. Myra's response was surgical. She didn't deny the purchase, denial would have been too brittle. Instead she explained it, a collector's impulse, rare botany as a personal interest, a purchase she'd intended to show Greta and then set aside and forgotten. She produced a letter from a packmate claiming to have seen her botanical collection 2 years prior. A fabrication, I was certain, but possible, and possible was enough to muddy the water. The council scheduled a full emergency hearing for 3 days out. Both of us, all 12 members, evidence presented formally. It should have ended there, in that chamber, with procedure and testimony doing the work that Cliffs and Rain were instead asked to do. But Mira had calculated that a fair hearing was a hearing she could lose. Kale came to my window the night before. 3 rocks on the glass, our childhood signal, strange to hear now in the middle of something so much larger than we'd ever been before. He looked wrong when I let him in. Pale, tight-jawed, like a man delivering news he doesn't want to carry. She approached me, he said. She had told him she knew he'd been helping me. That if he testified at the hearing, she would have him stripped of rank and exiled on a series of manufactured charges, detailed, specific, difficult to disprove. She had clearly thought it through. What are you going to do? I asked. He looked at me with those quiet, careful eyes. Testify, he said simply. I've never run from something I believed in. I wanted to tell him not to. That I could manage without him, that the cost was too high. But we both knew neither of those things was true. He left through the window. I sat up all night, not from fear so much as from the grief of understanding that no matter what the hearing produced, something had already broken that would not fully mend. The pack would fracture. There would be wolves on both sides of a fault line that would run under everything for years. This was what Mira had purchased with our mother's life, not just a title, but a division that would outlast all of us. I would not let it stand. The ambush. I arrived at the council chamber at dawn, 2 hours before the hearing was scheduled. I was there perhaps 20 minutes before the door opened. Not council members. 3 of our pack's warriors, young, strong, and wearing the specific expression of people following orders they don't fully want to follow. One had something in his hand. A cloth. A smell hit me like a wall collapsing, sharp, chemical, nothing I recognized, and then the room went sideways. I fought. I want to be clear about that. I am not a warrior, but I am not helpless, and in that room I used everything: fists, elbows, teeth, the frantic leveraged strength of an animal that knows it's cornered. I broke one nose. I marked another face with my nails hard enough to leave lasting scars. But there were 3 of them, and the chemical had done something to my focus, blurred the connection between intention and movement. When I came back to myself, I was outside. At Ashwood Cliffs. Rain hammering down, the kind that turns the world to static. My head ringing. My shoulder bleeding. And in my hand, I don't know if I'd grabbed it in the struggle or if it had been placed there deliberately, one more piece of staging, a silver blade. And across from me, in the dark and the rain, my sister. The cliff. It was always going to come down to this, Lena, she said. I could barely see her through the rain. My hands were shaking. Every part of me wanted to fold, from the chemical, from the blood loss, from the sheer weight of everything that had brought us here. But I stood up straight. The way our mother always stood up straight. You killed her, I said. Not an accusation. A statement. The kind of sentence that has finished deciding whether it's true. Something happened in Myra's face when I said it. Just a flicker, a window opening briefly on a room that was otherwise sealed. Then it closed. She was going to choose you, she said. The rain. The wind. The dark below the cliff edge. What? I said. She told me. Myra's voice was still controlled, still architecturally perfect, but something underneath it was burning, something that had been burning for a long time without any air. 3 weeks before she died, she sat me down privately and told me she had decided that she was going to recommend you to the council. The younger daughter. The quiet one. The one who sat in libraries while I was training. The one who never even wanted it. The laugh that escaped her was the bitterest sound I have ever heard from a human throat. She said you had the deeper roots. She said the pack needed still water, not bright fire. She said you were the one who could hold them together. I didn't speak. Everything I had done, Mira said, and the control was cracking now, spreading in fractures the way ice cracks on a river when the temperature finally turns, not all at once, but inevitably, each fracture creating the next. Every year of my life spent in the direction of that seat. Every choice, every sacrifice, every performance, and she was going to give it to someone who didn't even want it. Someone who would have been relieved to be passed over. Mira. Don't, she said sharply. Don't say my name like I'm something broken to be managed. I did what I had to do. I made a necessary choice and I have led this pack well in the months since. They love me, they trust me, I have earned what I am about to keep. You killed our mother, I said again. She stopped. She loved you, I said. She loved you completely and without condition. She was wrong about her choice, maybe she was wrong, but she loved you, and she would have stood beside you in every other way available to her. And you burned a root and put smoke in her lungs on a ridge she'd run her whole life, and she fell in human form because she couldn't shift, and she died alone in the dark without understanding why she couldn't heal herself. Stop, Mira said. She must have been so confused, I said, and my voice cracked for the first time, a single fracture, and I let it. She must have been so frightened. She must have called out and heard nothing but wind. Stop, Mira said, and this time her voice cracked too, and what came through the crack was not anger but something older and rawer, something that had been living underneath all the architecture for a very long time. The rain came down between us. And then she moved. Fast, faster than I expected, the gray wolf in mid-motion, our father's coloring, enormous and furious and coming at me with the full force of a year's worth of held-back desperation. I shifted too, pure reflex, the black wolf, our mother's coloring, and we met in the dark at the edge of the Ashwood Cliffs the way we had met everywhere else over the last year, as enemies who remembered being sisters. The fight and the choice. I can't give you the fight in clean narrative terms. Fights don't work that way. They're noise and motion and the screaming animal instinct of survival, and every moment is both too fast and too slow. What I can tell you is this: she was stronger. She had always been stronger in raw physical terms. I was faster, better at reading ground, better at using terrain. She got her jaws around my shoulder and the pain was volcanic and something in me made a sound that would have been a scream in human form. I shifted back. Human again, in the grip of a wolf twice my weight. The blade still in my hand, silver cold against my bleeding palm. She shifted back too. Maybe instinct. Maybe, and I have thought about this for years, turned it over in the dark, maybe she didn't want it to end the way it was heading any more than I did. We were both human and bleeding in the rain at the edge of the world, and I had a silver blade, and she had nothing. And she looked at me. I saw it then, the real thing, behind every mask she'd constructed over the last year. Behind the composed grief and the elegant leadership and the surgical precision. She looked young. She looked like the 14-year-old girl who pulled me out of a creek, the girl who had built her entire sense of self around being chosen, who had organized every year of her life in the direction of her mother's approval and been told, finally and gently, that she had come up short. She didn't ask me not to use the blade. She just looked at me. I dropped it. I want to be clear about that, because I know how this part of the story sounds. Some of you will think it was weakness. Some will think the story required more blood than it got. But I am the one who lived it, and I am the one telling it, and I am telling you, I let the blade fall into the dark below, and I crossed the rain-soaked ground between us, and I put my arms around my sister. She went rigid. Like an animal bracing for a blow. Then, all at once, she collapsed into it, not softly, but completely, the way a structure falls when its last support goes. She made a sound I will not describe to anyone, because it belongs to her and only her, and some things are not mine to share. We stayed at that cliff edge for a long time. The rain slowed. Eventually it stopped. The sky above the Ashwood forest turned the particular blue-gray of pre-dawn, that color that exists nowhere else in the world, that I have associated since childhood with the feeling that the worst of the night is over. What justice looks like. I brought her to the council the next morning. With Cale, who testified, as he had promised he would, with the quiet unshakable dignity of a man who has decided what he believes in. With Wren, who finally said aloud everything she had been carrying. With Osric's record, certified and irrefutable. The hearing was long. It was not clean. There are no clean hearings when a beloved leader is revealed to have been murdered, and less clean ones still when the murderer is her own daughter. Council members who had been certain of Mira sat in their chairs with the particular stillness of people reconstructing a picture they thought they understood and finding different shapes in it. Mira did not deny it. I had not told her she should. But I think, by that morning, she was tired of the architecture of her own lies. I think some very old, very exhausted part of her was ready to put it down. She spoke quietly and without performance, the first time in months, possibly years, that I heard her voice without an audience calculation behind it. She explained what had happened. What our mother had told her. What she had done. Why? The council's judgment was exile. Our pact does not execute, hasn't in 3 generations. Permanent exile, with the record lodged in every neighboring pact so there could be no safe harbor, no second act, no opportunity to begin elsewhere what had been built and broken here. I watched her go. She didn't look back. I don't know if that was dignity or grief or simply the forward motion of someone who only knows how to move toward the next thing, even when the next thing is nothing she chose. What I carry. The council named me Alpha of the Ashwood Pack 3 weeks later. No formal proving, under extraordinary circumstances, a unanimous council decision holds. 12 votes. 12 wolves who had loved my mother, who had believed Myra's framing, who now sat with the particular gravity of people making up for something. I accepted. I want to tell you it felt like triumph. Like arriving somewhere I had always been meant to be, like the end of a long road into warmth and light. It doesn't feel like that. It feels like weight, the right weight, weight that matters, the weight of something real and living that depends on me. But wait. I think about Mira every day. Not with anger, anger is a fire, and fires go out when they run out of fuel. I think about her with the particular grief of someone who can see, with terrible clarity, how a story became a tragedy. How a girl who wanted nothing more than to be chosen could never believe she might be chosen through anything other than competition. How she turned a pack into a contest, a sister into an enemy, a mother into an obstacle, and lost everything in the process, including herself. She said, on that cliff, that our mother was going to choose me. I have turned that over countless times, examined it from every angle. The unfairness of it, from a certain view, the older daughter, the one who worked harder, the one who needed it more, passed over for the quiet one who didn't even want it. I understand Myra's wound. I do. I have never stopped understanding it. Understanding is not forgiveness. Forgiveness, the kind that releases both people, is a longer road than I've yet walked. I'm still on it. I think I will be for a long time. What I know, standing here on the other side of everything, is this: I am still, quiet water. My mother was right about that. And still water runs deep, deep enough to hold a whole pack, to hold their fears and their futures and the memory of everything we have lost. Deep enough to hold even the memory of a sister who tried to destroy everything, and whom I loved before I feared her, and love still, in the complicated aching way you love someone who has become a cautionary tale written in your own blood. The Ashwood pack endures. I endure. And somewhere out there, my sister endures too, carrying what she did, moving forward in the only direction any of us ever can. We were daughters of the same mother. We were competitors for the same throne. We were, always and underneath everything, sisters. She was my sister. And my greatest enemy. And I think about her every single day.